Hello everyone. Welcome back to Resident Evil 4. I'm sorry to say, it's happened again. This is me recording the audio to a session many months later. Somehow or another, the microphone didn't record for this particular session, so this is the third and final time that I'm going to have to record some audio after the fact. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in the other re-recordings that I did, that it's kind of a bummer because I don't exactly know what I lost. Especially in this one, though, more so than the others. Like, I had maybe a few more context clues going into the other episodes, like what I had been talking about, or what gaps I needed to fill, and more specific things I needed to respond to. But this one, I feel like I didn't really have as much of a sense of what I had been talking about at this point in the game. So, I don't know. We're about to go to the Krauser boss fight, and I'll try to do my best here, but we have some peculiar ruins here, and this kind of gets a little bit weird. It's a little bit strange, like it's kind of ambiguous as to what all of this refers to, and also why is there a tunnel going up to this thing, and why is this like elaborate entrance built out the way that it is. In general, the island, this kind of beguiles some, I don't know, there's some mystery here. What exactly is this place? I don't know. There's all these strange carvings. I guess this kind of ties back into some of the stuff that we saw right at the beginning of the island, where like there were those wall murals in that one cave that were almost almost Mesoamerican, sort of. Whereas here, it's, I don't know, a lot of these ruins, I guess, kind of remind me of something more like Grecian, Mediterranean, certainly. Which I guess isn't impossible, depending on where this island is. Like, if we don't have a great sense of where in Spain this game takes place, but I guess it could be like, it could be a Greek outpost, because I think the Greeks were aware of the Canary Islands to go in one direction, or it could be a Roman settlement or something like that.
So, you two are all hooked up now, is that it?
Where's Ashley?
Do you really want to know? She's beyond that gate. But you'll need 3 insignias to open it.
What are you gonna do, Krauser?
There's one in the north, and the other in the east.
And let me guess, you got the last one.
It pretty much means you're on a tight leash.
Sounds like you thought this one out pretty well.
So this is really the start of kind of like the biggest, most bombastic, sort of militaristic portion of this game, and this section in general feels like it would be really, really influential on like some of their ambitions for what Resident Evil 5 would later become, certainly Resident Evil 6. So it's kind of a funny thing looking back on it now. I think there are some interesting and good things about this whole section in general. In particular, the idea that Krauser is kind of like chasing you through the space, and there's other threats, but it's kind of this evolving boss fight that's a little bit freeform, but not precisely. I think it's really interesting. Oh, and of course motorcycles are passing right when I start recording. So, Resident Evil 3 already had Nemesis, of course, as this kind of like roving pseudo-boss fight. But this certainly predicts, I think, like in some capacity or another, the stuff that you're getting with some of the later games, this kind of like late 00s renaissance that the series goes through with Jack and Marguerite in 7, and then you have Mr. X in the remake of 2, you have Nemesis in the remake of 3, who's made... There's choices that I know people aren't always entirely happy with how that was handled, but like there's certainly positives to it also. His kind of aggression and his kind of like disruption of how you move through space. is more like this than in the original game in certain senses. And then more recently with Resident Evil 8, you know, you have Lady Dimitrescu, and then I guess kind of arguably you have the like you have the motor guy in Heisenberg's factory. Not exactly the same. Those are like a little bit more scripted, but these are also pretty scripted. Because this like section, although I described it as being pseudo freeform, there is a linearity to this overall, like the overall format of this section. There is kind of an order you have to accomplish it in. There's just a little bit of freeformness in the sense that like how and where and when Krauser shows up is there's a little bit of RNG involved, and like some of his behavioral choices and like to what degree you choose to engage with him at any one of these moments is there's a little bit of variation within it. So I don't know. I don't want to say that this was explicitly what the other games were like pursuing. Certainly, I think 5 and 6 were looking at the kind of military stuff in both this section and in the next rooms. We'll get there later. But this idea of this like moving, roving fight is certainly something you see in some of the other games. Even in Revelations 1, I still haven't played Revelations 2 yet, but in Revelations 1, there's this like weird room-to-room boss fight where you have to chase this one creature, which I always thought was kind of cool. It's a cool sequence. I'll talk about that a little bit. I didn't do my playthrough of that, which I don't think has gone up on the channel yet as of the recording of this. But I don't know. I remember when I originally played this back in 2005 that this whole sequence was like very, very hype to me. I felt it was like one of the coolest things in the game.
What do you intend to do restoring Umbrella?
To bring order and balance to this insane world of ours.
A psycho like you can't bring order or balance.
You don't seriously think a conservative mind can chart a new course for the world, do you?
You got a piece of the holy beast, Panther. So in retrospect, it doesn't necessarily look as impressive, but at the time I remember this being like kind of an amazing set piece. We've talked about that a little bit in some other sequences in the game, but like this to me felt there's something about this that felt very, very like next gen at the time of me playing this.
Don't just stand there.
Yeah.
Come out and fight like a man.
I'm not falling for that one.
Just trying to have fun.
And like certain aspects of it aren't holding up great. Again, like the reliance on quick time events, like the degree to which it is sort of a staged set piece. But then again, maybe I guess you could argue that like when you talk about Resident Evil 4 as really being influential over like what would become cover shooters, there is something to be said like comparing this to a sequence in like an Uncharted game. But this is kind of like maybe a rudimentary take on what that would become. For the sake of it, you'll see me use my knife as often as possible in this fight. Despite the fact that the knife is generally fairly weak in the Resident Evil games, it's sort of just used for sort of, I don't know, bragging rights runs. And I guess it gets used for disruption in this game quite a bit, but like it isn't necessarily a weapon. They did actually code it into this fight that Krauser takes like a huge amount of damage from your knife. Like I don't know what the raw numbers are. Maybe there aren't even raw numbers to it. Like maybe I don't exactly know how it functions in a pure mechanical sense within the game, but like there is some circumstance under which the use of the knife is like not explicitly encouraged, but if you take it and somehow like read into it as some kind of like I don't know, some kind of like narrative hook between Leon and Krauser, you do actually get some benefit from it. Like one knife slash can be like a pretty huge amount of damage, and if you ever look up speedruns of this game, a lot of speedrunners like do this section basically just with the knife, because like really rapidly using the knife on him is like explosively destructive to, you know, his whole thing. Now this part I remember. My commentary was that for whatever reason I always think that there's another door in this room. Like I feel like it wraps around, and there was like another section I felt like I was supposed to do, but evidently there wasn't. So we actually have just about cleared, or we're getting close to clearing this section. Other than these weird spider robots who like never show up again the rest of the game and have never shown up so far. I mean, it's cool that like it's another type of enemy. Like the fact that the game is still adding new enemy types this late into the game, even if they're ostensibly just boss adds, is kind of cool. And I think if you get within a certain trigger range of them, yeah, they start. Oh, and then there's flying ones, dude. If you get within a certain trigger range, the spidery ones. Now we have a plane going overhead. Great timing for my recording. The spidery ones will start like scuttling at you, and they'll blow up. Oh, that might have been one right there that ran up to me. I can't remember what the audio cue was for it, but just because I don't remember seeing them scuttle that much, so I don't know if that was. Anyway, this sequence does continue to underscore some of the problems that I mentioned, though. At the end of the Krauser fight, like the knife fight on the platform, I went into that tirade about how I kind of feel like Krauser is kind of underutilized in a sense. I kind of feel like this just exacerbates that, and just as a reminder for those who have not seen it, or like who don't remember that. My point is that like I feel like the reveal of Krauser, or like Krauser coming into play, is supposed to be this big deal that they draw attention to. I also wonder if I had to step away to use the restroom or something, because this is an unusually long menu break. Weird. Weird to look back on old footage when I don't remember what the context was, huh? So, Krauser gets introduced really late in the game. Like, strangely late for how, like, big a deal he's supposed to be. Like, I don't think you see his face at all until somewhere like chapter 4.3 or 4.4 or something like that. And he only gets like this brief cameo of Sadler indicating that like Krauser is going to do something or somehow be relevant to the plot. But he isn't. You don't see him in the castle. You don't see him until you reach the island, and you don't see him until, what, like 5.3 or something? At which point you get a brief cutscene of him accusing Ada of...
What is it that you fight for, comrade?
My past, I suppose.
Umbrella.
Accusing Ada of being, there's that bomb audio. Accusing Ada of, like, being some kind of double agent, and then literally, like, one room later, she immediately betrays him. Which is sort of hilarious, but it's also, yeah, it just feels obviously, like, under, I guess, like, half-baked or something. You get the one knife fight with Krauser, and then it kind of fast-forwards to here, and it's supposed to be this kind of dramatic, significant fight, but we haven't really had any relationship with Krauser throughout the game for this to have like that much of an emotional impact. Now that we're like in this final showdown with him, who he is, how he plays into the plot, what his history is with Leon, they don't really fit very much. And I've subsequently reviewed some of the like extra material for Resident Evil, like the CGI films. Like there's the 3 CGI films, Regeneration, Damnation, and Vendetta. Krauser doesn't really come up at all in any of them, even as like a flashback or like some kind of like talking point at all. They all take place, I believe, after this, but still. And then this is now I'm really dating how late I'm recording these, but Resident Evil Infinite Darkness has now come out on Netflix, and I watched that, and like that's supposed to take place kind of immediately after this, and it again, it feels like this lost opportunity that like Krauser never really is like a factor in that series, despite the fact that like it could fit really, really well.
Two down, one more to go, Krauser.
We'll see about that. Witness the power!
You've lost it completely, Krauser.
Prepare for your death, Leon.
Another plane started flying overhead, which is great. So yeah, I mean, Krauser does show up in other canon material a little bit. Specifically, he's a really big part of Dark Side Chronicles, which was the light gun game on the Wii. It was the sequel to Umbrella Chronicles. Those games are actually like some of the best sources for lore in the entire franchise. They're probably the closest there is actually to like a single canon telling of the story, just because like a lot of the games have these like weird inconsistencies with canon. I think I've talked about that before as well, but like there's like the events of Resident Evil 1 as described by the video game Resident Evil 1 are not possibly canon. Like there's no outcome of how you play that game where the outcome makes sense with what we understand to be canon in the series at large. Umbrella Chronicles version of that game is probably closer to canon, which is weird. So Dark Side Chronicles is the sequel. Umbrella Chronicles covers 0, 1, 3, and then has this original sequence that also incorporates the Red Queen, who is like the malevolent AI from the Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil film with Mila Jovovich. I think this is great. So, Dark Side Chronicles is the sequel and focuses kind of more on Leon. It has two, I think, an original sequence with Leon. I've never played Dark Side Chronicles. I would love to, though, at some point, maybe even for this channel. But things are, this channel's very weirdly Resident Evil focused. I don't just want it to be that. But as I understand it, there's an original Leon sequence that largely focuses on like how he knows Krauser and like it explains some of the references that this game makes. And I don't know. Oh, there we go. More planes flying overhead. It's a busy day for them, clearly. That sequence took unusually long, I would also say. Like, maybe I was trying a little too hard with the knife when I should have just been shooting him. But, yeah, the Krauser stuff is it just feels weird to me because I as a huge fan of this game, like when I was playing it at that age, like it feels like Krauser immediately has such a big impact in this game. The fact that he's kind of thrown away relatively quickly is kind of unfortunate, and they rectify it some with, you know, like with the Dark Side Chronicle stuff, but it's a funny thing in retrospect that, like, I feel like this character who's quite hyped up gets thrown away quickly, and I guess that's a problem in the Resident Evil franchise in general. No spoilers, but like other games have this issue of like a character seems like they're going to be a big deal and then they kind of get thrown away. There's a lot of media in general that I think, I don't know, like geeky media in general, this is something I've thought about that has this problem of like making a character who gets loved.
So, it seems you killed Krauser too. How shall I return my appreciation?
What are you talking about? I thought he was with you.
What are you talking about? Did you really think I'd trust an American? To tell you the truth, I was contemplating how to get rid of him. But thanks to you, that's no longer necessary.
You were just using him right from the start.
Oh, I must hand it to you. You've demonstrated quite a bit of promise by killing Krauser. When your assimilation with Las Plagas is complete, I'll have you serve as my guard.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to decline your generous offer. I have prior engagements.
Enjoy your smart-mouthing while you can.
Characters get introduced and they're like really good designs. They're using a lot of promotional material, and I feel like people get quite hyped up on these characters and they kind of end up not being used, or like barely being used at all. I mean, some of that, especially in the case of like films, is just the limits of film. Like films aren't that long, but like a recent case that a lot of people have talked about, of course, is Phasma in the Star Wars sequels. Like,
Damn.
I think she kind of got hyped up because... Oh.
Hey, it's about time.
Sorry, bad traffic. I'll cover you.
So here we are in the big, bombastic military sequence. And a helicopter just uses its nose to push over a water tower. Ridiculous. Love it. Helicopter with guns and missiles and stuff just risk crashing by pushing something over. So here's our big bombastic.
Now that's what I call backup.
My name's Mike. You looking for firepower, you come to the right place.
Big bombastic military sequence. You compare it to Call of Duty, but honestly, this is before. This is like, I think this maybe is the same year or 1 year after the original Call of Duty came out. I think it'd be a year after, or maybe 2 years after, because I think Call of Duty 2 might have come out at the end of 2005 when the Xbox 360 debuted. I don't know that series super well, but like, this is way before the Call of Duty series was like a thing. I think people don't even remember. For anyone who's like younger watching this, there was in fact a time when Call of Duty series was like this, like it was kind of this market disruptor in a way. In like the PS2 generation, the Medal of Honor series was kind of like the big historic military shooter series that everybody played, and there was this huge criticism that there being way too many World War II shooters in particular. And the Medal of Honor series as this like juggernaut was like the one coming out game all the time, and people were so tired of it. And Call of Duty coming out, the original Call of Duty, was so like widely talked about as this like breath of fresh air. It's really funny in retrospect that it would get talked about in that way. But check out reviews of the original Call of Duty from like 2003 or 2004, whenever that came out. It's a funny thing. And then 2 and 3 were also like really quite well respected, but they were also like they were also World War II games. There were 3 straight Call of Duties. There were World War II titles before the 4th one broke it all open with Modern Warfare, and that's kind of when Call of Duty as a franchise, as we now know it, kind of took off. But even that game was also considered like this like revolutionary, I don't know, kind of trendsetter and breath of fresh air and a world full of great storm shooters. The Battlefield series that we've gone into a bit too in this period. Anyway. Phasma in the Star Wars sequels. I think a lot of people were disappointed in her. Like, she got underutilized, on top of which people were especially mad because, you know, at the time of that character being announced, like, Game of Thrones was like peak hype, kind of, or just about peak hype, but having Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones playing this female stormtrooper in chromed armor was this thing that everybody was really, really excited about. I feel like that's another like cultural moment that people kind of forgotten about. But in spite of people really being down on that character, it's like that's not even like the first time Star Wars has done that. Like throwing away this cool character that gets used promotionally. Like, I remember as like a 9-year-old seeing Phantom Menace and being really disappointed that like Darth Maul's character is so cool, so well designed. Everybody was obsessed with like that character getting thrown away after one fight scene and one movie. Hugely disappointing, and then they did it again twice in the prequels, because Jango Fett, he gets a little bit more screen time, but like Jango Fett kind of gets thrown away in the span of one movie. He has a little bit more screen time. He's like a little bit more developed as a character, and he has like some good sequences. You get a space dogfight with those cool sonic bombs. You get some other stuff with him. You get the fight in the rain. You get the fight at the end. Like, he's not as badly utilized as Darth Maul, but like the idea, like they keep developing these characters that everybody's really into, and then just they kind of throw them away. As a child, certainly was disappointing. They seem so cool. And, like, you want the toy and you want the Halloween costume or whatever, and then you're already thinking about these things even before the movie has come out, because you're being aggressively marketed to as a child. But then the movie comes out, and yeah, the super cool characters are dead and gone, like, way faster than they came, it seems. The third movie did it too, General Grievous. General Grievous seemed like super, super exciting and cool to me when I was watching the Clone Wars, the Gendy Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoon on Cartoon Network. Grievous seemed so cool. I really was into those cartoons. I still like them a lot, actually. They're like better than the actual prequel movies. And Grievous seems so cool in those. He shows up in the third film, and he kind of sucks in the third film. He dies really fast, too, and you don't really get to see any of his, like, cool reptilian kind of acrobatics and like weird like live slickness that the cartoons made. It just made him like scary in a sense. And honestly, this isn't just a problem with the Star Wars prequels. Like, sorry, I'm on a weird Star Wars tangent, but even the Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy, like, it's always been this like funny irony to me that Boba Fett had this like huge cult following, and people were so into him, thought he was like the coolest imaginable character, and it's like he has one fight scene in the entire trilogy where he basically accomplishes nothing, and dies in the most embarrassing way possible. Like, he accomplishes basically nothing in the whole series. I guess he follows the Millennium Falcon, which is, like, kind of slick. And Darth Vader tells him in that one scene, like, you can't kill them, and that makes him seem like a badass. Like, oh, Darth Vader's telling this guy, to not be violent. That's, so impressive and so scary. But no, Boba Fett kind of sucks. He kind of sucks. He doesn't do almost anything in those movies, and he's a super cool character. And I know that like the books and the comics or whatever do more to elaborate on why he's cool, and that like influenced why people liked him so much. But like Boba Fett, you know, if you don't have access to that content, like Boba Fett's like a really cool toy, but like not actually a good character in continuity, at least. They've done more with him now with the like the Mandalorian and things. But again, like it's this weird thing where like it feels like various Star Wars creators are now trying to fill in the gaps where like this character that everybody loves who never actually did anything to be loved, like they now need to like retroactively like fill in some explanation. Maybe not even an explanation, but like they need to like validate people's investment in him being a good character when there wasn't ever a reason for them to have invested in him to begin with. At least not within the original trilogy. Maybe a little bit more so if it's like content material, but like I was never super into that stuff. I've been thinking about getting more into that. I guess that's speaking of like material. I've thought about getting into some of that for Resident Evil. Like I mentioned, I've watched the CGI films now, which I think are like they're supposed to be canon. But they have almost no actual influence on in-game canon, which is sort of funny. They have almost no influence on actual like in-game canon, or like there's all these weird things that should kind of be big deals based on what's described in the movies, but like I guess the games never really want to alienate people who haven't seen the movies, so they just avoid addressing that. Like in general, Resident Evil media kind of like avoids ever addressing anything other than like the Raccoon City incident. Like that's always sort of accepted and described as like the thing to know about the Resident Evil franchise. Like that is kind of this, like the Raccoon City incident is kind of like this thing that the whole franchise orbits around. It's not a bad thing, but it's something to keep in mind when they introduce these cool ideas. Like in Revelations, there's this like floating city called Terra Grigia, and in Infinite Darkness, they now introduce this like fictional country of conflict called Panamstan. And like these are cool, weird world building things that they could do more with. I guess like I said, they just don't want to alienate people, and so that they avoid creating a situation where helicopter, bro. They avoid creating situations where people wouldn't know what these things are, which is kind of unfortunate because like some of the more interesting world building things just kind of end up being like one and done, like show up in one thing and never get addressed again. Damnation, I think. Maybe it wasn't Damnation. Maybe it was Regeneration. I think it was Regeneration that also had this like utopian artificial city. That's a big part of the plot, and once again never gets addressed outside of the chapter, which is a bummer. There's cool ideas, but there's a ton of other extra canonical stuff that I would like to address. Some of it is definitely not canon anymore, but I think it could still be interesting. The SD Perry novel is one thing that keeps getting referenced. I know like fans of the franchise very often like the SD Perry novels. They're like the SD Perry novels. SD are initials. Perry is the last name. She was this author who made novelizations of 0, 1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica, and I think that there's a couple other novels in there that also bridge gaps between the games. They're definitely no longer canon, and they have things that definitely can't be canon, but I think that they introduced some good ideas, or at least that's my reading from like how people talk about them, and I haven't read them yet myself, but maybe that could be like a summer reading project. I get the impression that they're fun reads that, although they aren't canon in a sense, they maybe have some potential to like inform or flesh out canon, and it's kind of like anything that they say that isn't ruled out by canon, like you might as well absorb into your head canon because it's nice and it like helps fill in character motivations and like gives more texture to the world, even if they're not, even if they can't be real to the final games. They, you know, it's still something. So I want to check those out. There's some other stuff too. There's like one of the unfortunate things that is kind of a big problem is that like some of the most extensive... Oh, another cutscene.
Take cover!
Thanks. When we get out of here, drinks are on me.
Yeah, hey, I know a good bar.
Mike!
First Lewis, and now my helicopter bro. They're gonna pay. Admittedly, probably smarter of them to use the rocket launcher on the helicopters than on the game. Sorry I spoke over Leon's dialogue right there.
Ooh, I'm sorry, Leon.
Sadler, you bastard!
It's nothing to get all upset about. Don't tell me you've never swatted a bothersome fly. In essence, it's the same thing.
What did you say? Insects' life doesn't compare to human lives.
When you've acquired this power, you too will understand.
Guess it's another good reason to get the parasite out of my body.
I wish you luck.
There's something about recording the extra audio that, like, my brain has a disconnect a little bit, where I don't know, it's different than actually playing the game in terms of when I start and stop talking. Look down. Mike will make sure they pay. So yeah, the unfortunately, as I understand it, like, some of the biggest lore dumps, like, that the franchise has in terms of, like, maybe potentially really important lore, like really foundational, like, universe shaping lore, some of that stuff are in these, like, Japanese only limited run stage plays that, like, aren't I don't think they're recorded. I guess maybe I should look into it more, but, like, there's been a bunch of Resident Evil stage plays, like, actors on a stage doing Resident Evil. They're not, I don't think that they actually play the canon characters, like, they're not playing, like, Leon, Chris, and Jill in them. I think it's all original stories that take place in the Resident Evil universe.
Leon, you okay?
Yeah. Sorry, Ada.
We have to get that parasite out of your body.
Yeah. But before that, I gotta save Ashley.
Fine. Let's split up.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's these giant lore dump stage plays that I need to look into, if there's recordings of them at all. I'm sure that there's summaries available online, but, you know, I'll have to look into that, and maybe someday I'll make a video about Resident Evil stage plays, because I feel like this is a thing people don't talk about, but, like, if you check out, like, the Resident Evil fan wiki, there's so much. I said maybe I'll make a video about it. We're wrapping up the session. Sorry again that I lost this audio. I hope this never happens again with any other playthrough I ever do, because this is a huge pain. Before we go, I'm actually going to intentionally die here real quick, because I think I mentioned in a previous video that there's this one particular animation that the regenerators can do that I think is super cool, and a lot of people don't know it exists, but I think it's, like, one of the scariest animations in the game, so I'm gonna, like, purposefully let myself die. We're gonna take off his leg. Should I miss? Yeah, jumps like a fish. Yeah, very few people ever see that. I guess I didn't intentionally die, but I intentionally took damage there. But, it's there's a ton of these animations. Like, you can actually, you know, if you're morbid, You can look up like all the possible death animations, or like you can look up rare Resident Evil animations or whatever, and you can find that there's like all these weird interactions that are highly unlikely to happen. But that's one of my favorites in this game. A lot of people don't see it because they don't go for the feat. But next video we'll be wrapping up. Next video is back to the actual audio from when the game was recorded. So there won't be this weird discontinuity. So, you know, enjoy that. We're wrapping up the series. Like, we're wrapping up the main game next episode. We're killing Sadler. Credits roll. I still, as of this point, like many months later, like 6 months later or something, I still haven't actually recorded Mercenaries or Assignment Ada, so we'll have present day me do some of that relatively soon. So anyway, you know, thanks so much for watching, everybody. See you next episode. Enjoy the finale, and you know, go see some Resident Evil stage plays, I guess, if you live in Japan. Tell me what I'm missing in the lore. I need to know.